Hey everyone, it's Flakfire. World War I spurred the creation of some of the most terrifying weapons to date. I've been reading the video comments a lot lately, and many of you enjoy talking about what potential behemoths could be in upcoming Battlefield 1 DLC. We don't have much to go on for what might show up in the Name of the Tsar, Turning Tides, and Apocalypse, so here are my thoughts on what might be the next behemoths in Battlefield 1. I'll even rank them on a scale of how likely I think they are to be included in the game's DLC and explain why. First, let's examine a few requirements of a behemoth. All of the behemoths in Battlefield 1 have at least 4 seats, and all behemoths can be destroyed in sections. As of when this video was published, there are 4 behemoths: the airship, the dreadnought, the armored train, and the new Char 2C tank. Conspicuously, there are no traditional aircraft on this list. Heavy bombers were used by the Germans to deliver large payloads against targets as far away as England. The giant Zeppelin-Staaken R6 was one of these planes. It was designed to replace the more vulnerable airships, which already serve as behemoths in Battlefield 1. With a wingspan of over 42 meters, that's nearly half a football field, the massive bomber had a top speed of 84 miles per hour, or 135 kilometers per hour, and it was armed with 4 MG-14 machine guns. In addition, the Zeppelin-Staaken R6 could also carry about 4,400 pounds of bombs, the equivalent of 2,000 kilograms. Another heavy bomber that saw service in World War I was the Russian Ilya Muromets. Designed in 1913, these bombers flew over 400 sorties in World War I. They had a top speed of 68 miles per hour, or 110 kilometers per hour, and a payload of 1,100 pounds, or 500 kilograms of bombs. The Russians also experimented with a number of different weapons on board the Ilya Muromets, including a 37mm cannon and a variety of machine guns. This might make an interesting behemoth in the vein of an AC-130 airship in Battlefield 4. Of course, piloting any of these planes as a behemoth in Battlefield 1 would be an interesting endeavor. DICE would have to decide how much to limit the plane's maneuverability. In the case of Battlefield 4, the AC-130 would simply circle over a location. If players are given full control of a heavy bomber like the Ilya Muromets, you don't want to risk a novice crashing the behemoth into a tree 10 seconds after it spawns. If a behemoth bomber is implemented, perhaps it will take the same route as the airship behemoth, with DICE limiting the vertical control of the plane. Either way, flying the Ilya Muromets would be fun, especially in the upcoming Russian DLC. I'd say either the Ilya Muromets or the aforementioned Zeppelin-Staaken are the most likely to join the ranks of the Battlefield 1 behemoths, so I'll place their likelihood on a scale of 1 to 10 at a 9, with the Ilya Muromets leading by just a hair. I'd almost guarantee it's coming, and it would make sense to add it in the Russian DLC this June. At ground level, there remain a few options for new behemoths in Battlefield 1. I'll admit I was surprised by the inclusion of the Char 2C in the recent French DLC, especially since the German Grosskampfwagen, or K-Wagen, would have been my first choice. It might be a bit too powerful to balance with its 4 77mm guns and 7 machine guns, but it truly fits the behemoth description. The K-Wagen was 13 meters long, 6 meters wide, and it weighed 120 tons, almost twice as heavy as the French Char 2C. The method of aiming the guns was actually similar to that of a naval destroyer, making it a true landship, and it boasted a crew of 27. It supposedly had a top speed of a blistering 4.7 miles per hour, or 7.5 kilometers per hour, but it never saw combat. Only one was finished prior to the armistice, and it was scrapped after the war. I'd peg the K-Wagen at a 4 out of 10 for being added to Battlefield 1. Its sheer size and number of big guns might keep it from joining the other behemoths. The Italians also tried their hand at a heavy tank during World War I, and the Fiat 2000 was their endeavor, sporting a 65mm gun in a turret and 6 machine guns. Weighing in at a petite 40 tons compared to the K-Wagen, it was 7.4 meters long and 3.1 meters wide. Like the K-Wagen and Char 2C, the Fiat 2000 never saw combat on the Western Front. The footage here shows a prototype Fiat 2000 in Italy during testing. The beast had a top speed of 4.3 miles per hour or 7 kilometers per hour. As is the case with two of the real-life behemoths depicted in Battlefield 1, the fate of the Fiat 2000 remains unknown. The Fiat 2000's design is slightly different from the Char 2C since its turret can traverse the full 360 degrees. It's not too far out there, but it also doesn't offer much in terms of a different experience from the existing tank behemoth. As a result, I'll put its probability at a 5 out of 10. Naturally, it's impossible to mention massive tanks without mentioning the truly gigantic Char tank. Looking like an enormous antique bicycle, the vehicle was not intended to be a joke. The spoked front wheels measured 9 meters in diameter, and the vehicle was 12 meters wide. For weapons, the Char tank was allegedly armed with cannons and sponsons on either side of the hull, and other cannons and machine guns in rudimentary turrets on the top and bottom of the main hull. The machine was actually completed in 1915, but it fared poorly in testing. The large wheels were deemed too vulnerable to artillery fire, and the entire tank became stuck in the testing fields near Moscow, where it remained until it was scrapped in the mid-1920s. While comically massive, the Char tank actually has a lot going for it when it comes to being a potential behemoth in Battlefield 1. It's got several sections that could be destroyed separately and potential for a variety of weapons and gunner positions. Its design is significantly different from the Char 2C, and there is definitely some wow factor. If we're going to get another tank behemoth in Battlefield 1, I think the Char tank has potential at a 6 out of 10. Meanwhile, the mighty dreadnought in Battlefield 1 will get some company in the upcoming Turning Tides DLC. A new naval destroyer vehicle has already been confirmed, but could there be another naval behemoth added to the game? A great deal of discussion surrounds the likely inclusion of submarines in Battlefield 1, but could they actually be a behemoth? In reality, they weren't heavily armored and probably wouldn't be as impressive as other behemoths. Still, submarines were featured in Battlefield 1942, so there is a precedent for them being added into Battlefield 1. World War I saw some unique submarine designs like the British M-Class. The M-Class featured a BL 12-inch battleship gun mounted on the front of the boat, as well as 4 torpedo tubes. The submarine's intended roles ranged from coastal bombardment to close-range engagement of military and transport targets. Only one entered service before the end of World War I, and it did not see combat. A massive cannon on a submersible is indeed unique, and torpedoes would make it a dual threat on the upcoming naval-centric maps. It'd be limited in player positions, however, since the only other weapon was a high-angle anti-aircraft gun. I'll rate the M-Class at a 3 out of 10. This next submarine I'm pulling straight out of left field, but I think it has the potential to be one of the next behemoths in Battlefield 1. The British also toyed with the idea of submarine cruisers as early as 1915, eventually beginning work on the submarine HMS X-1 post-war in 1921. The boat featured 2 turrets, each equipped with 2 experimental 5.2-inch quick-fire guns designed specifically for the X-1. The submarine also had 2 machine guns for close-in defense and 6 bow torpedo tubes. The X-1 was actually intended to be a match for surface destroyers and frigates, but how effective it would have been remains a subject of debate. It could make for an interesting vehicle or behemoth in Battlefield 1, since we know DICE is willing to reach a bit into the post-war period for inspiration, as evidenced by the Char 2C. The HMS X-1 actually has an adequate number of positions for a behemoth, supposing there's a captain able to fire torpedoes, 2 main turret gunners, and 2 machine gunners. On top of this, it just looks really cool, and we know DICE loves to put obscure weapons and vehicles into Battlefield 1. Seeing this beast rise from the waves in Battlefield 1 would be really awesome, and it's for these reasons I'll rate the HMS X-1 at a 7 out of 10. If we get another naval behemoth, that's where my money's at. And another thing to mention, for both of these submarines, they were historically used to lay mines, so that could be another potential ability. But that covers the most likely behemoths that could be added to Battlefield 1 from my point of view. Some of them are a little bit crazy and out there, but so were many of the ideas thought up during the war to end all wars. What are your thoughts on these potential behemoths in Battlefield 1's upcoming DLC? Which is your favorite? Is there something you'd like to see instead? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, share our websites like Facebook and Twitter, and of course, subscribe. To take your Battlefield 1 game to the next level, check out the Battlefield 1 Ultimate Utility app with a link in the video description. And as always, thanks for watching.